Okay, good morning. We're up to Siman Reish Mem Daled Sif Vov. Yehudi Hakoine Meches, he bought the rights to collect taxes. Umaskir lo ein Yehudi lekabel meches b'Shabbos, and then he sells the rights to collect taxes on Shabbos. This was quite a common trade in the past, that they would give Jewish people some of the more unpleasant, the money lending, tax collecting types of roles. And if the Jew would have the rights to collect taxes, and then comes Shabbos, he sort of subcontracts that out to a non-Jewish person to collect the Shabbos taxes. Mutter, that is actually okay, imhu b'kebolos, so long as it's done as a kablonos arrangement, which we'll see. Dahainu, that means she'omer loi lechashatig b'mei dinarim, whenever you collect 100 dinar, eten lecha kach v'kach, you'll get a cut of it. So therefore, the non-Jewish person is doing it adaita denafshe, and therefore it's not a schirus. He's not paying. He's not paying him. He's working for the Jew for that day, and the Jew gets the money. That's not a problem. So long as it's through a kabbalan arrangement, then it's going to be okay. All right, says the Mishnah. Let's do the Mishnah till there. Umaskila in Yehudi haloshen eina meduyuk ki hakavonu shesoiche es hain Yehudi. He hires the non-Jewish person to collect the taxes on Shabbos. So imu b'kebolos, says the Mishnah Lam Beis, the oz shari medina. Then me'ikar din, there's no problem. Kamoi ba'oris la'abdon b'reish siman reish Beis, like we discussed in the beginning of Reish Beis. That we will discuss, Mr. To mutar litzin lekodim shkias hachama. You can give him hides to tan before sunset on Friday. Imu b'kebolos, if the arrangement is kablonos. Mishum da'adaita denafshi kavod, because the non-Jewish person is not doing it for the Yisrael, he's doing it for himself. Even though you can't tell him to do this work on Shabbos, and it's quite a public sort of work. Everyone knows this belongs to Israel. It's as if he's doing it in the house of the Jew. We're worried that there's going to be a major financial loss for this Yisrael, and therefore we allow it. What's the concern? That a person is very anxious about his money, and if we don't permit this arrangement of this tax collection of Shabbos through the Ein Yehudi, we're so worried this guy's under such financial pressure that he'll collect the money himself, this Yisrael, for Yovlidei Surah Deraisa. And he may come to do a much more serious problem, i.e. an Issa Deraisa. What is the Issa Deraisa? He might start writing down on Shabbos sort of tax collecting receipts and things like that. That's the problem. And therefore, if the meches in question is something which you don't actually write down, you're taking not so much money, but you're taking sort of their food and things like that. Also, in Yehudi, that would actually be also, strangely enough, the lo yovle de issa deraisa. There, for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why, there's no concern that you might come to write down, and therefore there's no issa deraisa at stake, and therefore we're not, the whole svara of bahal al mamona, you might come to the issa deraisa, we permit it, and therefore if there's no concern of issa deraisa, we actually, there's no heter anymore. Afilu lo sharinale. The Taz and Magen Avraham has said even in that situation we allow it. But he himself can't collect minei machal afilim hu lahuva mechutz letchum. We're not worried about the rices where he might come to trap the animal mishum imseichav sechel. And the whole problem is a drabonim imseichav sechel. You can't be engaged in your own mundane activities on Shabbos. You should be involved in the chefsi shemayim. We'll get there. Okay, let's just finish off this Mishnah and then we'll make 2 points. So this is also another type of rent. So again, for those who just come, we're up to Sifov, Reish Mem Daled Sifov, and we're talking about the good old Jewish profession that was very, very common in those days, either money lending or, in this scenario, collection of taxes. So if you are the tax collector, you bought the rights to collect tax, and you then are allowed to sublet the Shabbos collection rights to any Yehudi, and you're selling those rights to him so long as it's done by kiboilas, which means a kabbalas arrangement, which means for every £100 you collect, I'll give you £10. You keep £10 or £20. So you take a cut of whatever you collect, and therefore the non-Jewish person is doing it adaita denafshe. That would be allowed, and the reason we allow it is because the person is bohol al mamonai, and if you don't allow it, he'll come to collect it himself. He'll start writing down receipts and things like that. So Chazal, remember, this is all Isurei Drabonon. That this getting a non-Jewish person to work for you on Shabbos is Isurei Drabonon, and because we're choishesh that it might come to Isurei Deraisa, that if you didn't allow him to do it, he'll do it himself and they'll start writing. They allow it to do it. Okay, let's just finish off the Mishmur, then I'll make a couple of points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Yehudi shesochar bishul hamelach minasar. So again, he collected the rights to make the salt in town, the salt production. Mutter lahaskilo palim bekibolis. He's allowed to hire workers to do on a kabbalas arrangement. If they produce X amount of salt, they'll get a percentage. Even though the whole production and the kalim all belong to the Israel, Shari, it's permitted, as long as you're not actually carrying out wood from the Jew's house on Shabbos. Or so long as all the equipment was handed over before Shabbos, you can't sell it to him on a weekly basis, a monthly basis. The only het is if it's done through a kabbalan arrangement. Okay, let's just see two interesting footnotes, 27 and 28. So the Mishnah Berurah had said, the whole heter is mishum pseida, and so he says in the 27, the heter zeh shel mishum pseida kosov b'shatzian lekamon b'shem mataz shehurak be'esek godel. It's got to be, the mishum pseida means it's got to be a large operation. There's going to be significant losses. Therefore, that's when we say a person is worried and will be anxious about his money, and he may come to do things himself. Someone who's got a large business and is worried, he wants to make these arrangements on Shabbos. In other words, there's a difference between losing money and not making profits. Mishum Pseida, Chazal allow this. But not to make a profit is not good enough, says the Shevet HaLevi. She'ein b'chlal hetazeh, mishum shelohuta hadova el adam shelule zeh yifsid memoinoi v'yishavim matzalachmei. We're talking about a situation where the guy's going to make a financial loss, he won't have bread to eat, and this is a very serious situation for him. But not that he's going to lose out on a profit. And then he adds very poignant words. Sheboduk u'manusa, it's tried and tested. You try and find heterim and eitzes, shtickler, things like that. For when it comes to Shabbos, at the end of the day you'll lose, and therefore just to play it straight, and trying to avoid various heterim. Okay, 28. Another interesting ha'ara. Why have you got to take the actual equipment out of your house before Shabbos? Because we're worried that if you see the non-Jewish person carrying out the equipment from the Jewish home on Shabbos, people will suspect that you instructed him to do that. Therefore, in a city where there is an Eruv, or there's a walled city, then it will be okay. There's no Isaitzah where there's a walled city or where there's an Eruv. Additionally, maybe you sold it to him on Shabbos. Fine. That even if there are Jews who are living in that, non-Jews who are living in that town, then even then we should avoid, even if there isn't a, we should try and avoid getting the non-Jewish person to carry out the equipment on Shabbos. Doesn't look great. That we're concerned that he might, the instructions were on Shabbos, and maybe there are issues, and therefore it's best to avoid it. Okay, Lamed Gimel. So the Mechaber had said that if you have someone bought the rights to collect taxes, you can tell the non-Jewish person to collect the Shabbos taxes, and you'll give him a cut. And for every 100 mer dinar that you collect, I'll give you kach v'kach. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Gimel, Tahainu she'in mazkir lo yem Shabbos kal. You're not mentioning Shabbos. You're just saying for every 100 pounds you collect, you take a percentage. Ela b'stama. You're not mentioning Shabbos. Ela in tigbe kach v'kach. It's not kach v'kach. Im kein lav schir yom. And therefore, there's no problem of schir yom. This is pure kablanus. V'gam les kan schar Shabbos klal. And therefore, in that situation, it would be okay. All right, let's finish off the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Haggah, and you can actually sell all the Shabbos tax collections to the non-Jewish person, and the non-Jewish person will keep the Shabbos profit himself. And we're not worried that people will say that he's doing this l'tzorech Yisrael to mock and say to b'yachei agav. We're not worried in a situation where the Jewish person is going to encounter a big loss. If he's in charge of the king's finances, the money of the king, we've got the same halachas as if the person, like we said previously, is in charge of the tax collection. You can hear the money, the noise of the coins and the. But still, we're not. We're not worried about that. And the only thing is, he shouldn't sit there. Don't sit in the room when the other person, the non-Jewish person, is overseeing things. And the Mishnah will explain a bit more detail why. Okay, it says the Mishnah Lamed Dalet. What's going on over here? Because if you're overseeing the king's the tax collection, again, mikadin, it's allowed. Why? Because the non-Jewish person who's going to take over the Shabbos collections, he's doing it for his own benefit and not for the Jew. Because of Magen Avram, the gam mishum schar Shabbos les bezeh, there's no problem with schar Shabbos afshehu maskir Shabbos lechud mishum dahari hu ki'ilu kona mimenu hameches. It's as if you've sold him the whole tax operation. V'havelei ki'ilu yedeh she'aviu lo einem Yehudim schar b'Shabbos. It's like when, if you know that an Ein Yehudi is going to bring schera on Shabbos, or Moch be'erev Shabbos Ein Yehudi, she'yikabel b'men b'Shabbos, and you sell, and you say to another non-Jewish person that he should receive it, and you sell it to him before Shabbos, to pshita d'shari. V'chein gabi matbea, so too with the finances. Moichele hurmana ba'alma, you're sending him sort of, I think that means this operation, masheyesh le'me'amelech, whatever the king gives you for overseeing his money. And the non-Jewish person who's dealing with the financial affairs on Shabbos itself, he's getting paid for it. And the whole problem over here is marasayin, because you're not getting anything. People will think that this person, this non-Jewish person who's working on the king's finances on Shabbos, is doing it l'tzorech Yisrael. That he's been hired by the Yisrael to write and to do all these things. And therefore, Mokum Peseda, we're not chayshish for this. Because this is not a schar Shabbos problem, this is a kablanus arrangement, and therefore, Mishum Peseda, we're not worried about anything. It's a marasayin problem. Okay, so that Lamatei, this is going on. So the Ramah says, Makom Peseda ki agav lo chashashu. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamatei, da the mashma mikol hapoiskim the lo hitiru afilu b'makom hefsed gadol ela ba'ofen zeh shetzia Shulchan Aruch. The whole heta over here is in the way the Shulchan Aruch is described. Tahainu oiba kiboiles, either it's a kablonis arrangement, i.e. for every £100 you collect, you get such and such, or you actually rent out him the total profits he gets. I.e., I'll pay you, you'll pay me £1,000, and whatever profit you get. So that's not schir Shabbos. Because the Ein Yehudi is working solely for himself. If you're paying him, $100 a day, also b'chol gavni, then that's a problem. Another good old Jewish profession, where you would run the tavern in town, you would run the inn, the pub in the town. But based on you bring in a non-Jewish person to your house, Al Yom HaShabbos Lasok B'Mechiras HaMashka, and you keep the tavern open, and he runs the operation for you on Shabbos, Shelo Kedin Hemoisin. Even if you think that not making any profit on Shabbos is going to be a hefsed gadol, that's a schiyom arrangement. You're paying him, for working on Shabbos for you. And maybe the big is also a concern is that it's just you're losing profit. And therefore the only way of doing this in a halachically permitted way is through kablonis, in the way that the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah have explained in this sif. Or you sell him the whole business before Shabbos. People will still know it. This is the Israel's business. Zem mutza mishum pseida. Well, if he mashikosavna lekaman b'shem hataz, yeh mutza b'zel Yisrael leishev merochuk v'lishmer shelo yignev en Yehudi me'isik. It would be allowed if you sell him this. You've come to a mutter arrangement with him for you to sit there in the corner and just watch things. But don't get involved. Don't get involved in the whole business. Don't speak to him about it at all on Shabbos. You can sit there as a shomer almost, watching from afar. But it's very hard for you to keep quiet. It's your business and he's running it for you, and you're sitting there not going to say anything. That's very hard. People are matir, when you're not looking for kulas, and you trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then Asharov, praiseworthy are you. Okay, and then just finishing off the Mishnah Berurah, we said in Lamed Vav, if you're running the finances of the king, dinay kedin hamamuna ala meches. What does that mean? It says in Mishnah Berurah, Lamed Vav, al kein mutar litan hakesef le'en Yehudi meboyjem bekibolos. You can hand over the money to the non-Jewish person in a kablonis arrangement before Shabbos, that you've got the purse, that he's got the purse strings now on Shabbos. Shem yaseh lo min hakesef kach v'kach yitin lo kach v'kach ach sheyask la Yisrael revach sheyaleh mizeh b'Shabbos te'en Yehudi kanal. That you arrange a kablonis arrangement or some other arrangement that he gets the profit, etc. Mishum pseida, that would avoid the pseida. Shelo Yeshiv Yisrael, and then the Ramah just finished off and says that you've got to be careful. Yizah Shelo Yeshiv Yisrael Etzel Ein Yehudi. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shehiskilo Ashluchai v'Kosav Hataz the Masha also Leishiv Shalom Hanu Kedei Leida Mahi Ha'isaskus Sheisen Yehudi. That you want to know what he's getting up to. U'Kedei Lekabel Hemenu Cheshben Alzel Shel Alzel Lemochot, that you can keep tally for tomorrow. Dezeh also Mishum Mitzvah Tzecha. That is what we'll see later on in Shinvov Mitzvah. That's caught by Mitzvah Tzecha, that you should be involved in Cheftzei Shemayim on Shabbos and not your own activities, your own sort of personal financial activities. Could come in Siman Shinvov Sif Aleph. Are many Yoshiv Sham and Kedei Lishmar any Yehudi Shlo Yigneves and Meches, but you're not there for financial reasons, i.e., to see what he's getting up to, but you're just sort of more of a shomer, that he doesn't steal anything. Then mutter. Doesn't sort of pocket any money from the taxes that he's collected himself, that would be okay. And therefore, because of that, that seems to be a heter to allow those people who run mills, mehasar, again they run the local mill, to put a Jewish person to sit there on Shabbos to watch things. But don't speak anything. Okay, so that's the end of Reish Mem Daled. Some very technical, but quite relevant halachas for our time.
Okay. That's the word with rent. Surely this is the same as rent. You can't, if you're renting a house to someone and paying.
So for the rent, normally when you take rental payments, it will be for a month or for a year, and therefore it's havlah. It's all considered included in the general thing.
The Airbnb, for example, nowadays.
So what does that mean? If you own the property and you're renting it out,
you rent out like an Airbnb just for the Shabbos Friday.
Yeah, but then so include that as Motzei Shabbos and things like that. So in other words, normally the rental will be from the check-in will be 3:00 on a Friday afternoon till, let's say, Sunday afternoon 3:00, even Shabbos afternoon 3:00. So you've got part of it is non-Shabbos, and therefore that would be havlah. Okay.